Welcome to the historical mind. For most of the 20th century, it was the other half of the world, an empire behind an iron curtain. But what was life actually like for the average person? Inside the Soviet Union, it was a world of paradoxes. A place where you could get a free university education but couldn't find toilet paper. Where you had total job security but no freedom of speech. Where a deep sense of community was shadowed by a pervasive culture of fear. Today, we're going beyond the propaganda to explore the complex, contradictory reality of daily life in the USSR. Life in the Soviet Union, the red paradox for most of the 20th century. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics USSR was more than just a country. It was an idea, a global superpower built on a foundation of revolutionary ideology. To the outside world, it was the heart of the Red Menace, a grey, monolithic empire behind an iron curtain, a place of grim-faced comrades, and endless military parades. But for the hundreds of millions who lived and died within its borders, life was a complex tapestry of paradoxes, a world of profound security and suffocating restriction, of genuine community and pervasive fear, of grand public spectacle and private, crushing scarcity. It was a life where one could celebrate breathtaking achievements in space exploration, while being unable to find decent shoes in a state-run store. The cradle-to-grave state, a life of certain fundamental promise, of the Soviet system, and its most seductive appeal was security. From the moment of birth, the life of a Soviet citizen was charted and managed by the state in a comprehensive social contract. Education from nursery school to university was free and of a generally high standard, particularly in the sciences, mathematics and engineering, which were prioritized to fuel the state's industrial and military ambitions. This education, however, emphasized rote memorization and ideological conformity over critical thinking. Healthcare was universal and accessible to all, a remarkable achievement that eradicated many of the diseases of the old empire. Unemployment was officially non-existent. After graduation, the state assigned you a job, and that job was yours for life, offering a pension upon retirement. This system provided a powerful, if monotonous, rhythm to life. A citizen was born in a state hospital, educated in a state school, employed by a state enterprise, and would retire on a state pension. Housing, though notoriously cramped and of poor quality, was provided at a negligible cost. For many urban dwellers, home was the communal apartment or kommunalka, a defining feature of Soviet life where multiple families shared a single kitchen and bathroom. This forced intimacy was a social crucible, breeding both close-knit, supportive communities where neighbors became like family, and bitter, petty rivalries over kitchen schedules and shared spaces. Life lacked the dazzling choices of the West, but it also lacked the terrifying uncertainty of unemployment, homelessness, or ruinous medical bills. It was a life predictable to the point of tedium, but it was, above all, stable. The economy of scarcity, queues, blat, and the Second World, while the state provided the basics. The centrally planned command economy created a reality of constant, grinding scarcity. The government's obsessive focus on heavy industry and military might producing vast quantities of steel, concrete and tanks meant that consumer goods were a perpetual afterthought. The result was an economy of deficit or deficit, where store shelves were famously and chronically bare. The simple act of buying necessities was a daily struggle that defined the Soviet experience, a hunt that required patience, cunning and connections. Life revolved around the queue. A queue forming on a street corner was an event, a signal that a rare commodity had arrived. People would join it without even knowing what was being sold. At the other end, on the off chance it was something desirable: sausages, toilet paper, citrus fruit, or decent shoes. Every citizen carried a string bag called an avoska, a just-in-case bag for these spontaneous opportunities. This culture of deficit turned ordinary citizens into master foragers and hoarders. Their apartments filled with stockpiles of soap, matches, and canned goods. To navigate this broken system, another unofficial economy thrived in the shadows, the world of blat. Blatt was the currency of connections, favors, and personal networks, the lifeblood of Soviet society. The butcher would save a good cut of meat for the doctor who could get his child an appointment. With a specialist, the store manager would hold back a shipment of Finnish winter boots for the university official who could help secure a spot for her son. Who you knew was infinitely more important than how much money you had. Money could not buy what did not exist on the shelves, but Blatt could open the door to the storeroom. This created a complex, unacknowledged social hierarchy based not on wealth, but on access and influence, a system that directly undermined the official ideology of a classless society. The ideological bubble shaping the Soviet midlife was lived inside a carefully constructed and fiercely guarded ideological bubble from the earliest age. Citizens were immersed in the language and symbols of Marxism-Leninism. Children joined youth organizations like the Octobrists and then the Young Pioneers, where they wore red scarves and swore allegiance to the cause of Lenin and the Communist Party, participating in patriotic parades and summer camps. Education was not just about facts and figures, it was about ideological indoctrination. History was rewritten to glorify the party and erase its crimes, presenting a seamless narrative of progress toward a communist utopia. Literature and art were forced into the rigid mold of socialist realism, which demanded optimistic, heroic portrayals of Soviet life, celebrating heroic workers and wise leaders. The state had a complete monopoly on information. All newspapers, radio broadcasts, and television programs were state-controlled, presenting a constant stream of propaganda about triumphant factory production, bumper harvests even during times of famine, and the moral decay and social chaos of the capitalist West. Censorship was absolute. Banned books by authors like Solzhenitsyn or Orwell were secretly typed out, with multiple carbon copies and passed from hand to hand in a dangerous, underground practice known as samizdat, listening to a foreign radio station like the BBC or Voice of America, with its signal deliberately jammed by the state, was a criminal act. For many, especially those outside the major cities, the official narrative was the only reality they knew. The shadow of fear, the KGB, and a culture of silence beneath the surface of stability, and collectivism ran a deep undercurrent of fear. The state that provided for its citizens also watched them relentlessly. The KGB, the infamous state security agency, had eyes and ears everywhere. Its vast network of informers included neighbors, colleagues, and sometimes even family members, creating an atmosphere of pervasive suspicion. A careless political joke anecdote, a critical comment about a queue, or association with the wrong person could lead to a late-night visit, interrogation, and a sentence in the vast network of labor camps known as the Gulag. This created a culture of caution and public silence. People learned to distinguish between what could be said in the relative privacy of their own kitchen and what was safe to say in public. The kitchen conversation became a cornerstone of Soviet life, the one place where, over tea or vodka, people felt they could speak with a degree of honesty, lamenting the system's failures and sharing forbidden jokes. This bred a particular kind of doublethink, where one could sincerely cheer at the May Day parade while privately cursing the hypocrisy of the party elite. This pervasive atmosphere of suspicion was one of the most corrosive aspects of Soviet life, undermining the very sense of community and trust the state claimed to be building. A tale of two eras, from terror to stagnation. Life in the Soviet Union was not static. It evolved dramatically over its 7 decades. The raw, paranoid terror of the Stalinist era, with its mass purges, show trials, and the constant threat of being declared an enemy of the people, was different from the era of stagnation under Leonid Brezhnev. Under Stalin, fear was acute, unpredictable, and existential. Under Brezhnev, life became more stable and predictable. The terror subsided into a dull, bureaucratic conformity. Living standards slowly improved, and a generation grew up without the constant fear of the midnight knock on the door. This era was defined by a new, unspoken social contract. The state would provide a modest but secure standard of living, and in return, the citizens would offer their political passivity. Yet, the system grew sclerotic. and the gap between the official promises of a radiant future and the dreary reality of every day. Life widened, breeding a deep-seated, corrosive cynicism. The arrival of Mikhail Gorbachev in 1985 with his policies of glasnost openness and perestroika restructuring shattered this world. The ideological bubble burst. The fear began to lift. People could suddenly read about the crimes of Stalin in mainstream newspapers, watch televised debates that openly criticized the government, and question everything they had been taught. It was a time of immense hope and terrifying chaos as the certainties of the old world crumbled away with nothing to replace them, ultimately leading to the collapse of the Soviet Union itself in 1991. For those who lived through it, the Soviet experience remains a deeply personal and often contradictory memory. It was a life of shared struggle that fostered genuine patriotism and quiet dignity, but it was lived within a grand, flawed, and ultimately failed experimenter system that offered its people a life without freedom, but also a life without fear of falling in the end. The story of the Soviet Union is the story of millions of individual lives navigating an extraordinary system. It's the story of finding joy in small victories, of building community in cramped apartments, and of maintaining one's inner world when the outer world was controlled. It's a powerful reminder that history isn't just about grand ideologies and superpowers. It's about the resilience of the human spirit in the face of immense pressure. If you enjoy these explorations into the human side of history, please consider subscribing to The Historical Mind and hitting the notification bell. We value your perspective, so let us know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching, and keep thinking historically.